VikesNow, Dustin Baker with Josh Frey on March 29th. We are 29 days away from the NFL draft with most of the tantalizing free agent items in the rear view. OBJ still has to go somewhere. Lamar Jackson evidently still has to be traded. So there's still big stuff afoot, the culmination of the stupid Rodgers trade. But we're here to talk Vikings football. Josh, on a Wednesday, how are you, my man?
I'm doing good. We got opening day coming up tomorrow, MLB. Looking forward to that. We got so much NFL stuff going on. It's a good time to be alive.
It is. And then right off air, we were talking about the NBA playoff race. So we might have to do an NBA podcast on your platform before too long because that
Absolutely.
thing is a beast. All right, here's the first question. And I expect gold from you here because the Vikings cornerback rooms, CB, not QB, is to me, it causes a lot of anxiety right now because I'm getting the feeling, which I know it'll be fixed. It's like they haven't figured it out yet. That's problematic. Right now, the three possibly starting cornerbacks, and I accentuate possibly, are Andrew Booth, the Caleb Evans, and the new guy, Byron Murphy, who will start. And that's not enough beef in the modern NFL. I don't care how you cut it. Even if Booth and Evans have great training camps in summer, that's not enough depth. So I want to ask you, if you are the Vikings general manager, what are you doing about the CB room right now? And I don't want to hear, oh, they just need to get some more depth. I know that. I'm talking about who should they sign or who should they draft?
Yeah, I really surprised. We were talking about this off air too, but I'm just super shocked that they haven't done anything after that Byron Murphy signing. Like I would have thought for sure, especially with Duke Shelley's price tag, that they would have gone and gotten him. I figured they would have signed probably another veteran at this point, just like you said, to add some more depth to the room, because right now it's Byron Murphy and a bunch of young guys that have never played before. So I don't know if they're just the price tags aren't matching up or if they just don't see anybody that's a true fit for them. I'm still looking at a guy like Rock Ya-Sin out of Las Vegas, who's been a pretty decent slot corner throughout his career. Like, I don't understand why nobody's picked him up yet. And then Trey Flowers, he's a guy that you could go after as well. He's a little bit on the older side, but still definitely got some playing years left in him. So those would be the two names right now that I'm looking at in terms of veterans, if the Vikings are still interested in somebody like that. Otherwise, if we're going into the draft, and we still haven't signed a veteran, you definitely have to go get somebody, because 5 CBs and two of them are pretty much practice squad guys, and Kalen Barnes and Tay Gowan. Like that's not enough for you. So you got to go get somebody. I personally probably look to trade down from that 23rd overall pick, try to pick up another day two pick, probably early second, and then maybe another early to mid third rounder, depending on what you can get there. And then if you got 3 day two picks, you can knock out all three of the big needs right now: corner, quarterback, and wide receiver. So that'd probably be my route right now if they don't want to go get another veteran. Names, if you go into day two, probably like a guy, maybe Clark Phillips out of Utah, Cam Smith, South Carolina. He could go in the first round, but I'd probably project him to go early day two right now if I had to make a choice. But yeah, that's especially for the corner room. That's how I'd approach it right now.
So sign Rock Ya-Sin for the slot because he curiously hasn't been signed by anybody. And if that's it, then you have to spend one of the first two picks on a hopefully week one ready cornerback. Otherwise, that guy is waiting in the wings behind a prosperous Booth or Evans. Is that right?
That's pretty much the case. Yeah, I think if going into it, I'd probably looking at a Caleb Evans probably going to be that week one starter, just because he's got the most experience out of all those guys behind Byron Murphy right now. And then yeah, if you go get Rock Ya-Sin, you got your slot guy, and then Murphy can play a little slot too, so you got a little versatility, flexibility there. But yeah, that's the path for the corner room. We'll just see how it works out though, because right now it doesn't seem like they're too concerned about it.
No, it doesn't. We'll have to lean heavily on this mantra for however long. Is Brian Flores probably knows what he's doing, and that's what I'm banking on,
Yeah.
because it is a little worrisome. And I'm going to give you my Duke Shelley speech. I'm probably going to do it on this show about 7 more times this offseason. It's not a giant catastrophe that the Vikings let him walk to go play for another team, especially if we're chilling here a year from now and he's got like a 52 PFF score. Then we'll say, all right, Mr. Adafamensa, you were right. However, the problem is he was only signed for $1.3 million in Las Vegas. The
Mm-hmm.
Vikings owed it to him at that cheap price point to continue the lightning in a bottle. And even if it didn't work out and he sucked this September, Who cares? It's $1.3 million. So all of the, what's going to happen with Shelley? I think we talked ourselves into believing, oh, he's asking for 3 or 4 or 5 million. No, he just wanted a little bit more than league minimum. And it will always, in the jealousy will be real vamped down if he sucks in Las Vegas. But I really think the Vikings, he deserved a chance, because now that same chip he had on the shoulder from the Bears not wanting him, he's going to have the Vikings not wanting him. And he's probably going to ball out on a Vegas team that isn't ever known for good defense. All right. Yesterday at the annual NFL meeting, where a bunch of guys get together and talk about rule changes and all that, Kevin O'Connell got in front of a microphone and seemed to tout to the praises of the wide receivers that are already on his roster. He said positive things about the Jalens and, of course, KJ Osborne, who could be on deck for WR2 duty. Is there a possible way that these Vikings roll with Osborne as the WR2, then lean heavily on TJ Hawkinson as a Travis Kelce type in terms of workload, and then just call it good?
I think it's possible, especially if they are. It seems like with the signing of Josh Oliver, they're keeping that O-line intact, keeping a lot of the depth there. It seems like they're trying to become more of a balanced offense in terms of the running and the passing games in 2023. So if that's the case, then I think you could probably get away with just having those 3 as your main guys if you're going to pass the ball a little bit less than usual. But I still have my doubts that KJ Osborne can be a true WR2 for a team. He definitely had some really nice flashes in 2021, had a few good games in 2022, but a lot of them were against some of the worst teams like the Bears, the Lions, those type of teams where you can pretty much get whatever you want all day long. So that's kind of where my doubt stems from. I don't like Jalen Reagor. I don't think he's going to have much of a role in the offense this year, but I do kind of buy into the fact that Jalen Naylor can be a little bit more of a deep threat out of the slot for you. He's got wheels. First of all, I know his
speedy
4.5. He doesn't have his 4.5 40 doesn't really speak to that much, but he was a state champ in track and field in the 100 and the 200. He made his living catching deep balls with Michigan State throughout his college career. Don't let the 40 fool you. He's got wheels. He can get deep. He averaged 19.9 yards per reception last year, which 9 catches, not a huge sample size, but it still goes to show that he can do things for you in the deep game. So I'd keep an eye on that, but I really think that they need to go get another wide receiver. It doesn't have to be with that first round pick. Like we said, we can trade that pick down and go maybe day 2, maybe early round 3, you go get a guy like Tank Dell who's smaller, but he definitely can play on the outside. And you can swap him into the slot position too. So again, Kwesi Adofo-Mensah loves his versatility. You'd get a lot of versatility with that guy. So that's what I do. I wouldn't go out of my way to go get a guy like OBJ necessarily on a huge contract. Maybe if it's a 1-year prove it deal of $3 million, something like that, then sure, add a Super Bowl champ wide receiver for that price tag. But I wouldn't go out of my way to sign him for 10 million, something like that. But yeah, then draft pick. You got to draft a guy.
On my other show with Brian McKinney a year ago, Jalen Naylor came on as a guest, and he told me his nickname is Speedy. So you are correct that he has the wheels. He even said, I think, to Chris Thomas in last offseason that he was the fastest guy on the team. And I think he walked that back when Kalon Barnes came on the roster as Barnes wasn't even a practice squad. He was on the active roster. And then on Osborne, KJ Osborne, if you're watching, you're keeping tabs. Josh Frey is the guy that you can keep your tabs on.
Come at me.
The one that you can bookmark. All right. Another thing that has gained tremendous enthusiasm, at least in terms of volume in the last 10 days, is the Vikings trading up in the draft to get a quarterback, whether or not that's Will Levis, who falls to the 6th or 7th spot, or they get crazy sexy and trade to the Cardinal spot and draft CJ Stroud or whoever guy that they have penciled in that falls 2 spots. I want you to put a percentage of likelihood on the Vikings trading up to get their quarterback of the future in this draft.
I think I can't rule it out entirely just because you never know what's going to happen in the draft, especially if Carolina does do something crazy with that number 1 pick. But I wouldn't bank on it. I'd probably put the percentage at 20 right now, just because I wouldn't move hell and high water to go get one of these quarterbacks in this draft. Next year it's a different story, but I wouldn't do it for any of the 4 guys in this draft.
Really?
Maybe if CJ Stroud begins to fall a little bit further than that Cardinals pick, I might do it. But that I'm just not super convinced that any of these guys are major improvements over Kirk Cousins other than price tag.
Wow. Okay. And that's odd because I was told last year, not by you, but by the world, oh, this draft class sucks. Wait until the 2023 draft class. And now you're not saying they suck, but you're saying, oh, 2024 is even better. So it sounds like, I don't know, when you start to peel back the curtain, that 2023 is just a lot better because 2022 was horrendous for quarterbacks.
Yes, yeah,
Yeah.
that everybody's going to have a little bit more of a better, a little bit of a higher vision for this one, just because 2022 was horrible. It was a complete wash, other than like Kenny Pickett, maybe Malik Willis works out too, but that's about it. So I do think that the best case scenario, maybe 2 or 3 of these guys become like your baseline top 15 starters down the road. But I don't see any of them becoming like Patrick Mahomes, Josh Allen, unless Anthony Richardson just turns into an absolute monster, which is possible. But again, it feels like a low percentage chance right now, other than especially if he lands on a team like, say, Houston Texans, where you've got to do absolutely everything. You don't have the infrastructure at all around you. It could be a tough couple of years for him. So depending on landing spot, these guys might not be much more than, again, your Kirk Cousins type of player.
Thomas Davis, about a week and a half ago, a former Panthers linebacker, said that he expects the Panthers to do something surprising with the first overall pick. Why would they trade the farm to get there if they're just going to pluck a dude that they maybe could have got at the 5 or 6 spot? Any idea?
I really don't have much of an idea. I think it's just I'll take all the chances out the window and just go get your guy. If you have somebody in mind, go get him. I think that's probably what they're thinking right now, especially after hiring Frank Reich, Josh McCown as their QB coach. Like they obviously have somebody in mind, and they thought that maybe there's a chance that somebody sneaks up, like Tampa Bay, Tennessee, somebody sneaks up into that top 5 and grabs them. So if you go to number 1, nobody can beat you there.
Good point. I really hope. Oh God, I hope they get to the podium and say Will Anderson. Oh, I would just.
That would be so funny.
It won't happen, but oh man, I would die. All right. So I think you and I off air in our Slack channel for Vikings territory and Purple PTSD have decided amongst ourselves that there's probably going to be a trade of the 23rd overall pick. Now, you always got to do your mock drafts and stand pat, because otherwise trying to predict the trade is like needle in a haystack shit. So I want you to predict the possible trade partners, whether that's up or down for the Vikings, because I think most of us who follow this on the daily believe that the 23rd overall pick will go somewhere and not to the Vikings like ledger.
I think if we're looking at trading up, the Atlanta Falcons at number 8 could be a good spot. Atlanta, they've done a lot of stuff in free agency, and if they want to try to get some more draft capital, like maybe they go get the 23rd overall pick and a future first for 2024. I feel like that's a pretty decent trade for them. And they can go get one of those quality corners later on in the draft, and then Minnesota can grab whatever the QBs that are left at that point, because who knows who's going to be actually on the board. If we're looking down, I'd actually have my eye on the Houston Texans. They've got number 30, I think it's 33 in the or 35 in the second round, and then they've got 63 in the third round. So that'd be a pretty decent package for the Vikings to pick up if Houston wants to. They're probably going to go quarterback at number 2. They're probably going to go wide receiver, offensive tackle at number 12. And then if you want to go get a quality corner, maybe they're trying to move up and go grab one of them in the first round as well. So I think that if anybody in this draft can put together a type of package that the Vikings would be interested in, it's probably Houston.
Okay. All right. That's fascinating. And I challenge all of our listeners, again, for the folks that are obsessed with this, to start looking, because I really think what we saw last year, maybe it's not with the Packers or Lions, even though that's not taboo anymore. I really expect there to be a trade, because there were so many last year. And I think the Wall Street Guide doing Moneyball things is a trend. I don't think it was an outlier. All right. The final question I got for you, I'm going to go through the roll call here. These prominent players left the Vikings. Irv Smith, the perhaps TE1 for the Bengals if they don't draft a tight end. Patrick Peterson went to the Steelers, while Mike Tomlin came over from the Steelers. Dalvin Tomlinson went to the... Did I call him Mike Tomlin or Mike Tomlinson? Mike Tomlin. Dalvin Tomlinson went to the Browns. Duke Shelley, as we talked about, went to the Raiders. Eric Kendricks, probably going to be a starting off-ball linebacker for the Chargers. and then Adam Thielen to the Carolina Panthers. Now, usually when Vikings players depart, it turns into a relative nothing burger. Now, I know, well, what about Daniel Carlson? Well, he's like the one guy that, was left and has taken the league by the throat. So if
and he's a kicker. So.
Yeah, and he's a kicker. Yeah, it doesn't really count. Let's say by November or so, out of that group of, what was it, 6 or 7, which guy, week 10, 12 or something like that, are we saying, God, that guy's tearing it up? Which one or two will it be?
I think the most Viking scenario would be Duke Shelley just goes to Las Vegas and completely tears up the league. And he's the top overall corner. He leads the league in interceptions, something crazy like that. So that'd be probably the most Vikings pick. But I think the most realistic one is probably Eric Kendricks. Okay. Just because he's going to LA. Brandon Staley runs a very aggressive defense, kind of like Brian Flores in terms of heavy blitzing. And he likes to get his linebackers involved. So I think in that type of role, I think Kendricks can thrive a little bit. I'm not super sold overall on the Chargers defense as a whole, but if Kendricks comes in there and is a bit of a stabilizing force at that linebacker spot, I think that he's probably the most likely candidate that we're looking at in November. We're like, damn it, we let that guy, one of the Vikings legends, go, and he's tearing it up out west.
And then is Irv Smith, does he turn into a guy who can get 800 yards and 8 touchdowns, or are they just going to draft a big tight end at the end of their draft?
I think in that offense, with all the weapons around him, Joe Burrow at quarterback, I think that there's a chance that he could do something pretty decent in Cincinnati. I just don't feel like that one hurts as much, just because the Vikings are so set at tight end already that it kind of just came as an afterthought that he actually ended up, he went to Cincinnati. All right, that's cool. Maybe he gets a chance, but we're sitting fine over here. So good luck to him. And we're going to hope that maybe we'll run into him in a Super Bowl one of these days.
Yep.
But yeah, I don't see him as like one of those, darn it, we let him get away.
Okay. What I got to be weary of is sometimes during fantasy drafts, because I do end up being about 10 leagues per year. Sometimes I get pissed if I miss out on Mark Andrews or Kelsey, and then some years Kittle if he's healthy, which is a rarity. I'm like, all right, well, I'll find somebody in the later rounds. I gotta be careful not to do that with Irv because of my Vikings ties, where I just wait until round 10 to get Irv Smith, and then I miss out on guaranteed production from Kelsey and Andrews, because that is such a league winner when you have that in fantasy. On the other guys, I think Patrick Peterson goes to Pittsburgh personally, does pretty good, like we saw last year. He kind of fizzled a little bit down the stretch, was certainly held everything together in the first part of the season. Dalvin Tomlinson, I think Browns will love him, but that's because he's always the same guy, and he's like Tim Duncan. Right. Like, he's not elite. Well, okay, no, he's like Tim Duncan in terms of the quietness. He's not elite like Tim Duncan, but he's just good. He's always in the 70s of PFF every single game, and I think the Browns will like him, but I don't think we'll ever be like, oh my God, Dalvin Tomlinson. And then I think Thielen is the wild card, because will it really matter if he has 1,250 yards and 10 touchdowns on a team that's 4-13? Will anybody give a shit?
Don't think so. Yeah.
Except for fantasy owners, once again.
Right, exactly. Yeah. On Dalvin Tomlinson, I think part of that has to do with just not caring super much that he went away. Just that price tag was so high with him too.
I was relieved.
Yeah, exactly. Like if I was the Vikings, I wouldn't want to pay that for the next 4 years. So I was honestly kind of glad that he got his money. So glad for that, but two, that the Vikings aren't paying it.
Yeah, I hear you. One other question that just came to mind doing all these mock drafts, trying to get ready for a month from now. When do nose tackles tend to get drafted? I never see them anywhere when I'm doing a mock draft simulator, and they're vitally important. But are they just like running backs or like a guard? Like, yeah, we'll just get one in round 3 or 4. Like the big guys. Like, I'm talking Linval Joseph. Like, nobody ever cares about noses in round 1.
Yeah, I think post Aaron Donald, that's starting to change a little bit. But yeah, you're kind of right. Like, especially compared to like an edge rusher, most teams are probably going to pick the edge over the defensive tackle. But I think if you get a really good one that can rush the passer from the interior, like a guy, Clyde Cansey out of Pittsburgh that we've talked about, Brian Breesy out of Clemson, I think that those guys are definitely candidates to go round 1 along with Jalen Carter. But they're probably, again, if the Vikings stick at 23, that's probably those are 2 players that we're probably looking at because they're going to be available.
But do you call those guys nose tackles?
Nah, yeah, you're right about that. Yeah, no,
Yeah.
definitely not quite nose tackles. Yeah, you're right. You're right. Yeah, I think you might see a couple of those really big guys go top 50, but
Okay.
yeah, one is just so rare to find one of those guys that are super impactful on your team that
Hmm.
it's gonna be tough to truly find one of them that's worth taking that high in the draft. So yeah, I think maybe you see a couple go top 50, but very rare that they go in the first
Yeah,
round.
it was just a whimsical thing that came to mind when we were talking about Dalvin Tomlinson, because I think
Mm-hmm.
technically at the Giants he was a nose tackle, but then last year on the Vikings depth chart they called Harrison Phillips the nose tackle. I'm like, that guy isn't a
Right.
nose tackle. Let's be real here. But
Yeah.
maybe that's just my old football brain thinking from the '90s. All right, man. Well, we've got what, 4 illustrious weeks before the draft, and we'll continue to pound home this topic. I'm going to leave you be, and we'll talk next Wednesday, my friend. All right.
Sounds great to me, man. This was fun.
All right. Take it easy. Later.
See ya.